Welcome to the Alive with Courage podcast. This is a podcast where we get to dive into the mind and lives of leaders who are living fully alive and courageously in their calling. And I have the pleasure of one of my best friends being with me, Shawn Benson. I've known Shawn for 26 years, and it's been one of the most beautiful friendships that I have. And so I treasure him as a human and what he's meant to me in my life. And today we get to go just really dive into his life and how it has shaped what he's creating in the world, our friendship, and how he's really being shaped in this season because there's a lot going on in the process of that. So excited to really jump in, man. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me. This is
Yeah,
interesting. I love it.
right on. Well, Shawn, you and I think we bonded and connected back in the Point Loma days when we were going to college. I know for me, the big draw to Point Loma was just simply to surf my brains out. And we met each other, I think, either in the water or trying to cheat on Spanish homework, trying to just get that stuff done so we could have more ocean time. And yeah, man, just connecting in that season. I don't know about you, but for me, it was such a special time because Point Loma represented such a vibrant Eden-like atmosphere of real friendship, real faith, like real adventure. And you were such an integral part of that. I'm super curious, like, what do you remember about that season and what did it mean to you, like in that time?
Yeah, the best of times and the worst of times were, I think, had there in certain regards. But yeah, it was a time capsule.
Mm,
Point Loma is at this point in stage in life. Point Loma is a time capsule, and it's this beautiful, hermetically sealed, sort of ideal circumstance for young men who liked the ocean.
mm,
Um, and wanted some communion with friends. For me, it was really interesting because it was kind of like a reboot. I haven't really thought about this in length, but Point Loma it was kind of like a chance, like high school, going through puberty, just sort of figuring out like, these are my legs. No, how do I navigate, all these people and places and things. And I've always been I was a late bloomer in many ways. That's continued in life in certain aspects. And I've felt like I've been ahead of the curve on certain other things, sort of superpowers. And one of them was really interesting because it was like this social component for Point Loma was amazing. It gave me this restart. It's like, how some people have name changes and they'll show back up as, I'm Benjamin, I'm not Shawn
yeah.
now. It's like I didn't change my name, but I had an ability to sort of tap into, I think, a part of myself that I didn't know I had or wasn't comfortable doing in sort of the more raw aspects of life in my youthfulness. Just didn't have that inclination. And so Point Loma gave the room to sort of test and push on some of the boundaries of that and just meet people and there was a lot of safety. I think there was a lot of heart safety there.
Yeah.
Somehow there was that space for that. And it's both environmental, but it was also just a matter of the people that pile up at Point Loma, right? That they bring through and they vet and
Yeah.
Christian backgrounds and sort of parents probably being raised with similar familial circumstances. In
Mm.
that, comes a little bit of shame. It's like, why do I get to go do this? It was almost like like a surf camp in a lot of regards. So
Yeah, it was. It was
that
summer
was,
camp for 4 years. I mean, really, the rhythm was like wake up, go to class till 2:30, jump in the ocean till dark, go to the calf, get some food, and then try to study till 10, and then do it all over again, like every day. Uh,
or
yeah.
not study and then meet a new friend because you didn't get your stuff done and you're mooching something off of him.
Exactly what happened for us was like, it's 10 o'clock and I need to get Spanish homework in tomorrow. What do you got?
Seth seems like he might be willing to share his hard work with the
Yeah.
slacker.
I mean, we could talk for hours on like the adventures. I mean, so many awesome trips to Baja and like, we spent almost a year in Chile together after graduating. I mean, when I think of like just I'll pause for a second and just share for me. Like, I wasn't a believer coming into that space, and man, what you set up in our relationship, and also just the Point Loma atmosphere, like radically changed my life. Like, it basically showed me this beautiful picture of the family of God, and like,
Mm.
this is what real connection looks like. This is what brothers look like. This is what brothers do, is they go on adventure together and they do fun things, and you have awesome conversations on a Friday night versus getting drunk or high or something like that at a party, which I had dabbled with in high school, and it was just so shallow. So Point Loma, you and the crew that we ran with just created so much depth that my heart was longing to access, and I didn't know it existed in the family of God. And you guys just
Mm.
really represented that well for me, and radically changed the course of my life, to just become a Christ follower and also be adopted into this family of God. So it was, you know, you played such a key role in helping, whether you knew that or not, like really shepherding me through that. I think you knew it at the time, but I don't think you know how profound it was for me. Like, I'm 44 now, looking back and saying, you know, that was one of the most profound shifts of my life, was during that season. And so
Mm.
you and a couple others were so integral.
There's a sense that I've known that, and I can break that up into pieces too, and we can sort of look at it. But I think that the earnest desire was connection, right? And I think God took our parts and pieces and just overlapped us really well.
Yeah.
And with a bunch of the other guys too. I mean, like the parts of the body, that make the whole. I think we were a pretty whole group, in a way we're just this little microcosm of the church and youth.
Mm,
Really, really interesting to sort of see that, how it all came together. And it came about through the idol of surfing, right? It came about through a passion of just wanting to be in the ocean. I mean, that's why I met you, because I was in the ocean too much, and I didn't, I think I was trying to dabble with going on a date with a girl and spending too much time with her, and then I got behind on Spanish. And it's pretty funny that the guy who needed to cheat from you is the one who somehow brought a part of Christ into your life, right? That's kind of like the dark comedy that I think God sets up for us, right? And
it's so funny.
I was really in a lot of ways, I was pretty fixed in like who I was and not very shakable in those aspects. There was a formation that happened, since I was like 12 years old and on. I just was captured by the Spirit, and God said, you need to get baptized. This is who you are. And there was aspects of me that I think I've had sort of the I want to be good. It was like a big driver. Like even in high school, like I didn't drink. I didn't get around. Like I was in sports. I did my work. I got good grades. I
Yeah.
slipped into Point Loma, and it just seemed like another sort of birth. But like I had held fast to the belief that, God had made me who I was. And the things that were natural and easy were funny. For I think I felt different and apart from a lot of kids,
Interesting.
because I wasn't chasing those things. I wasn't chasing, drinking or a relationship that was going to sort of fulfill me.
Mm,
There was also sort of like it might have been protecting myself and not knowing it, but there's this really interesting book by Robert A. Johnson called He. The subtitle is something to the degree of like the psychology of the masculine mind or heart.
hmm,
And he goes through he goes through this the story of Parsifal and search for the Holy Grail,
hmm.
as a parallel to every man's life.
Wow.
And I listened to that, man, it was just a few months ago, and it totally and absolutely captured my heart. I'm like, holy cow, this is sort of the progression that I actually got to live out. And one point that he puts is that a man in his youth comes to the Grail Castle and has a chance to drink from, the chalice
Mm,
from the Holy Grail, and he just doesn't even know that he's there. And it's sometime
wow.
around like 16, 17. And so I think that like there's aspects of, in hindsight, especially being like 45 right now,
Mm,
that this book says that a man gets to encounter the Grail Castle um, this second time, somewhere between 40 and 45 years old.
Interesting.
And you actually know where you're arriving at that point in time.
Mm,
And so if I look back, I see aspects of deep conviction and not the wisdom yet, but sort of a inclination in the way that God made me, who God has made me to be.
mm,
Not in fullness, but at least the easy parts that God's really made those sort of strong components of, I want to treat the golden rule, even, like I want to treat others as, I'd like to be treated.
yeah.
So I'm going to go out of my way and I'm going to just take care of my friends, and I'm going to treat them with kindness and respect, and I'm going to love on them because I want love in the ways that I want it. And I think as a youth, like around 16, 17, I didn't necessarily have a lot of confidence in sort of like my physical form and height and things of that nature, but I knew I had a very strong scaffolding in terms of how I was made and saying this is okay. You're okay who
Mm,
you are. And God has woven you into this creature, right? At bare minimum, there's sort of this like very primal piece of me that was led by the heart and came into Point Loma with that. And
totally.
so I think that's what you're recognizing is sort of the conviction, the baptism, the formation of wanting to be in church and being hungry for what does it mean to be me as a human,
Mm,
and how does that play off of everybody that's around me. And so
mm,
I've spent a lot of time in that era looking outside of myself or what's going on, like observing. And I was a lot quieter and a lot more sort of introverted, but principled. Like I had a lot of things that I said, this is a boundary, this is a boundary. And it didn't have to do with other people. It had to do with where, well, it did in some regards, but I think I set those boundaries so early on. No one's inviting me to party at Point Loma. Nobody's, you know,
yeah.
I, I think I was pretty transparent about where I was walking, and I think you guys all kind of, there's sort of the ragtag crew that came in, and you were kind of mixing in there and just surfing, right? It overlaps with surfing. And so I did feel pretty alone at the beginning, but
Mm,
I was okay with that because I'd felt that in high school too.
interesting.
But I just kind of sussed through and worked out, and we made connections, and we all grew into this profound friend unit. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It's not like anybody ever said like we're gonna mound up. This is us. It's just like it truly was like a magnetic
Mm,
sort of pulling together, and we all huddled around surf, but it was around a lot of other things too.
totally. Well, yeah, I never heard you explain it that way of like kind of that conviction or that solid state that you entered into Point Loma with, and even you know, courageously held on to, like, despite some of the, I mean, I remember we used to tease you and call you like Sean Sheltered Benson or whatever, and like kind of like maiming that goodness that you were committed to holding on to, and you took it well, but like looking back on it, it's really cool to hear you describe it because it's like, no, you were committed to goodness, like committed to
Yeah.
kindness, committed to generosity, committed to trusting, and also too, just an amazing surfer. And like, there's just this cool aura that was around your life that I think was attractive. And it was like, that's some goodness that I want to be a part of. And there was lots of people that I think flocked to that, myself included, changed from. So it's a cool, I'm not like blowing wind up your skirt, but I think there was something there that was like, and like to hear you say like, yeah, that was tasting the chalice a bit, of like, hey, this is who I'm meant to be in an environment like this, and this is what it looks like to go lead that way is pretty powerful. So yeah, that's a really cool way to see that. Um, yeah,
Let me jump in there. Another thing was like, so feeling like super alone and like just feeling kind of just different, right? I'd made decisions to be different. Some of it was just natural and some of it was very intentional. And so yeah, being Sean Sheltered Benson was actually like it was a little bit of a cut, right? It's like, I'm not that sheltered, but there was also sort of like yeah, I'll take it. Like, this is the path that I've chosen for myself. And it was pretty fixed. Like, if we're going to be honest, like, and I think maybe we'll be able to talk more about that later. Being 45 and looking back at that, like, yeah, that's different. But there was no betrayal in that group.
Mm,
right? I think that's why it's not just Point Loma, but also our friend group at that time. And even a year after, as we were still kind of stuck together and going different ways, it was hermetically sealed in the sense that I was able to give my trust. And like there was a belief that I'm going even to trust that the best part of you is going to come out in
wow.
our interactions, right? So that trustingness, it wasn't that I don't see that the world is full of all sorts of betrayal, but there was this moment in time that like I think is both a positive and a negative. That like I grew up with a dad that like he had seen rough times through his entire life.
Mm,
And he always said like life's not fair. This is I know other dads probably said that too. He's like life's not fair, life's not fair. Because
mm,
that was his narrative. And I was sort of at this place in Point Loma that's like, no, we need to trust in the goodness of people,
mm,
which is a little bit misshapen, in hindsight, or a lot of bit misshapen. But the essence of the fact that I was saying, God, I trust that you have built in goodness into this person's soul and being and character that can come out if I give it space to do that.
yeah. I choose
The
to
the
go out.
scary part,
Yeah.
yeah, the scary part is that I put my own physical and psychological well-being at risk. And, at that point in time, I grew up to be big enough that it's like, it's not like my physical well being. I didn't worry about it as much. But what I didn't protect from after that was sort of, I wasn't honest with the heart after we left Point Loma, but it shaped me in such a way that I wanted to give more people than probably deserve to have that
Sure. Yeah. Very generous in that way.
because we had that group, right? And we were thick as thieves, and it just, the depth, like you said, of connection and shared life was this brotherhood piece that I think you and I being married at this point, like can see that there is a difference and there's something very profound and maybe even a deeper type of love
Mm,
that men can share if they're aligned with the spirit's calling on their life and
mm,
they're able to share it,
yeah.
there's just sort of a support and care and understanding that I think we can share that
Yeah.
maybe we can't even share with our spouses. It's just different. It's not better. It's just different. It's
Yeah.
profound in a different way.
Yeah. And I think, like, especially when the chaos of the world starts coming at you and starts wanting to attack and erode the goodness and the trueness and the generosity and all the things that you were almost anointed to go bring out into the world, right? Like, and having those types of depth of friendships is so critical to be able to weather some of those storms. So I want to get to a couple of those storms because there are some storms that came, that I
Hmm.
observed in your life. But just to kind of move us through the timeline, we graduate Point Loma. You and I and another friend go on this epic trip to Chile to work on a YWAM base for 6 or 7 months, which was really another reason to go surf as well as a surf and serve trip, and just got incredible waves. Got to see how missionaries live on just a shoestring, just but so full of life and faith, like on that YWAM base down in Chile. You come home, you marry Jess, your sweetheart from college, like get married young, like mostly out of
Hmm.
college, which was not a late bloomer move, but an
Hmm.
awesome move of just like full confidence and trust to go after her heart. You then jump into like a postgraduate degree in architecture, and design, right? And like go through that whole process, which was, and at this point, the friend group has kind of split up, gone its own ways, like moving and shaking to go create their next place of Point Loma.
Hmm.
And it's and to me, I think what I'm really interested in is like, so you described this Shawn that was like so committed to that goodness, that generosity, that high trust. And then all of a sudden, like you're married now, you're out in the world, you're flexing your creative capacities with architecture, jumping in and really like moving fast with some of that of like, hey, I want to go step into a project, something that'll help, something will take shape from all this hard work I've had. And I'm really curious, like, as it occurs to me, the way I saw it is like the world started attacking a bit of some of that chalice, of some of that goodness and some of that gifting set that you had, and started really challenging it. I'd love for you to just kind of take us through that segment of like how some of the storms that started coming to start
Hmm.
attacking the
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. that but I appreciate you calling some of those things anointings because I am only now coming around to seeing some
Mm,
of those. I was kind of, in a season recently after all of this that we're going to probably touch on is like a separate me, right? But the reality is it's just a form that is lacking some wholeness.
mm,
And I'm not saying I'm a whole now, and we'll talk on that too, I think. But there's sort of having to look back at yourself and actually know yourself that has been part of this, from man, I mean, that's years though. We're 20 plus years out from college now. And
Well,
there's
you
just sort of multiple stages. But yeah, I don't know that it was, I think there was sort of an extension of some Point Loma-ish stuff that I got to participate in. I was working at Walking on Water when I was early married with Jess, and we had this it was an extension into marriage. And she was my buddy, right? I'd lost all my buddies to the ways of preparing for the world and finding a way to support ourselves and pursue what we thought were our passions in order to survive. And we sort of distributed. And so I was there with Jess and we had it pretty good. I mean, Jess was mature in a lot of other ways. She had already sort of set job at the Salk and really interesting just base to land on for
mm,
me. And it wasn't that I wasn't working, but it was that I wasn't having to truly carry somebody else at the beginning of my marriage.
yeah.
And so I would say that there was a prolongation of some of the boy in me,
Mm,
right? And so stepping in and dabbling in things and walking on water was sort of the easy path, right? And so I think through my 30s there's a series of, it's funny that you're saying like I really grinded or pushed towards certain growth, but it's sort of flecked through my mid 20s, late 20s up to my 30s in sort of still wanting to surf as much, wanting to, stay on, because that was a high. Point Loma was sort of like this high point, this mountaintop.
yeah.
And so just holding on to pieces of that and sort of being fixed in like this is who I am and this is how the world works, and
Mm,
not really understanding that I was dealing with some fears, which is like I need to maintain this structure, this external piece of sort of peace, the peace piece, which is like if I'm surfing enough, if I have my friends by me. Jess and I we were in a church at Mid City, and we were going to church, and we were kind of in the mix of that extension all the way into the 30s.
mm.
And so it was really interesting to not be aware. It's interesting to me now to not be aware that I was attempting at a certain point to start to shape the external to fit the rigidity of my internal
Interesting. Yeah.
idea, sort of bring about things on the external to sort of give me the semblance or sense of peace. And without like, and meanwhile, sort of, maybe I can touch back on this later, but like sort of internal structure that was in a lot of disarray. So I had things that I was very convicted about, but they were fixed and pretty rigid.
Mm,
And then there's this whole other part of me that's sort of just pushing down emotion and avoiding um,
mm,
my real fears, my real concerns, and trying to be for everybody else what I'm supposed to be.
mm,
So for Jess, what am I supposed to be as a husband?
mm,
Not having a lot of that with the friends, right? But at church, who am I supposed to be? Um,
mm.
And so it was like really relying upon those like natural inclinations that you're saying that are like people pleasing that were, what
Just
could I say? I mean, it was genuinely me. It's genuinely me. It's just sort of like a caricature of parts of me rather than the whole picture.
yeah.
And there's sort of this other piece of me that I'm not willing to address all through my 20s and 30s, nor did I necessarily have to address it or confront it or know that it was there. And so I start in my 30s going through and trying to create structure that I thought would make, moving towards architecture is a really funny thing to look at because it's creating environment for hospitality. It's creating environment for stability. It's immovable to a certain degree, right? We all know that over time everything decays, but
Permanence.
there's a permanence to structures.
Mm,
And so what's crazy is if I think about it, my heart's telling me that I was doing that to sort of, I can build my masculinity, my ability to have a profession, be known for something, everything outside of myself, right? And so there's all of those things that are, I'm trying to construct something on the external that'll bring me that peace internally.
Wow. Yeah.
And I don't know that I in my youth it wasn't, I don't know that it was that I consistently felt at peace given by the Holy Spirit as a kid, but I had these blips and things that would sort of carry me to the next. And the thing that carried me between that was the rigid sort of belief system and structure
Mm.
that was, it would get me to those high points because it was based off of heart sensation, like feelings of a guy that was pushing aside his own feelings, very profoundly. I have this like, this is a little bit of a tangent, but like I remember watching movies through my 20s and 30s, and there's like these heartfelt movies. I think you and I talked about this last time we saw each other, but like Chef's Table, things where there's like deep passion and people pursuing things and overcoming. I had moments where I just like all of a sudden I hadn't cried for years. And then all of a sudden I'd watch something and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm crying,
Mm.
with like a dumb Disney movie or something. I'm like, what? This is so stupid, like thinking wise. But it was like, there was a lot of, hey man, you've pushed a lot aside that you don't realize.
Interesting.
And that was my thought in terms of like masculinity and starting to construct from the exterior instead of from the interior out.
Hmm.
So the 30s was like a lot of that and sort of saying like, oh, people have asked me to do these things or be this person for them. So I'm going to try it on.
Yeah. Like looking back, is there anything that stands out to you where you're like, yeah, these were some of the things I was suppressing or pushing down or choosing to keep moving forward, even though it was like blinking at me?
Like, there's a lot of like not, give me a second for this one. I think I'd sort of push down what I really want or how I really felt around other people so much for so long that I'd gotten in the habit of that being normal. So somebody says, let's go get a burrito. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that actually. So I'll just say yes.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, sort of the lightness of my own agency in certain aspects of life it's not, it became not just being like casual and easygoing, but rather because I was not actively participating in
Mm.
my own sensations to the situation. And so it was more of like an intuition, like this is the formation I've been in for so long that I say yes and I go along with, and that's my character. And I want people to see me as that became more important than taking the minute or month or year, just quiet time to
Hmm.
even know what do you really want, Sean?
Mm.
So at a certain point, like it's like I was allowing vague community to drive my orientation and trajectory in life.
Hmm. Well, it
And
almost
so,
sounds like too like you're identifying a part of you that really like let's just call it, like I don't want to name it for you, but like what I was hearing in that was this idea of like say the pleaser Sean, like that
yeah.
part of you, it worked for a number of years.
Mm.
It allowed you to move through life and just even give the goodness, give the trust, give the benefit of the doubt to a lot of people, and people felt really loved by that, and it's like, wow, this works. When I sort of say yes to create harmony and to create goodness and not really check in with what I need and want in it. And it kind of works. Like it gets me the friendships and the connections and moves me through life.
Mhm.
And would you agree with that as like a rough sketch of like a part of you that it
Yeah,
worked?
it's a yes and too, right? Because it's like there's other parts of me that actually put fuel behind that thing too, which is like I'm curious about you.
Sure.
I love getting in like awkward conversations with people, right? And the premise is that I'm in my youth, I wasn't going to sort of battle against them. It's going to be sort of like a let's lean up against this person and see,
Mm.
like in my nature in doing that, it was genuine. So I think people opened up,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's not that it's not a part of me, but I got used to riding that wave of just like getting tied up in everybody else's story because I am curious and I do genuinely care.
Yeah.
But then I would find myself listening to somebody and be like, oh man, why do I feel like I want to get out of here?
Yeah. Interesting.
Right? Like that's what started coming through in the 30s. It's like, or I check out mentally and I'm thinking about something entirely different, but still giving somebody a head nod and like, because they're drawing on, right? And what's funny is a lot of that happened in through the church. We fed the homeless, and there was things, these works of mercy that we were going out to do that would show us the sort of face of Christ. We'd have the opportunity to meet Jesus in the streets, and a lot of other dark reality. But, I just so many people that I just be like, what's your deal? And people don't get listened to,
Hmm.
right? Like a lot of people are like, especially difficult humans,
Yeah.
or they have like, they're very eccentric or odd. Like sometimes people overlook them. They don't have things to say. And
Hmm.
so you give them an ear and they'll take it. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it facilitated a sort of, at a certain point, it was like my head was a balloon with helium in it, right? And I just allow it to sort of get blown about. I think another sort of imagery that I felt like a lot was that I was like just a head floating on water,
Hmm.
or like a balloon that's just like floating in the ocean, and there's just things kind of just, and there's no motor or
Hmm.
driving force behind it. And
Yeah.
it wasn't all the time, right? But those tendencies and neglecting the parts of me that like actually wanted,
Yeah.
what do I want? And not asking myself that, not balancing that out with the other habits that were formed,
Sure. Yeah.
got me in a lot of amazing stories, but a lot of things that I had to dig myself out of, that if I would have had the discernment to say, no, this is a boundary, we're not going to go there,
Yeah.
and just say no,
Yeah.
that I would have saved myself a lot of heartache. But I don't know. Hindsight's 2020. It's like that wasn't what that was there for me in that time. It was for me to learn these things and be in the constant, in sort of a state of I think you and I have talked about process, right? Of change, and nothing is static. And so that era was, yeah, trying to create an external environment that would give me the semblance of the sense of peace. And it just got further and further away.
Hmm.
At,
What
at first it's,
So
go
I'm,
ahead.
I'm curious, yeah, like so as this balloon is kind of floating and kind of inflating and keeps moving and it's still tethered to you, but it's kind of like on its own journey and moving around. Like I'm curious at what point did the balloon did this reality kind of get popped for you where it was like,
Yeah.
okay, like this way of being or this way of going out into the world like actually is getting disrupted in a really profound way. And we could call it like hardship storms, but on the flip side
Yeah.
of that, it might even also be just the grace of God, just saying like, hey man, I've got something more for you than maybe this floating balloon life that you described, right? Like, so I'm curious, what were some of the moments that like kind of like really exposed this part and some of the darker sides of it?
Yeah. I think just to summarize what was happening was, I was at the bottom of a pool in the deep end with lungs that still have some air in them, having a hard time touching the ground and just like trying to walk forward, right? That's what it
Mhm.
felt like through some of my 30s. Even though if you step back and look, I got through architecture school, right? Like
Mm.
I've moved towards building houses. There's all these things that have happened through my 30s and into my 40s that's like very concrete, right? Externally,
Very cool. Yeah.
very, very concrete, and maybe not prolific and as moments of these like mountaintop experiences, but like for the most part, like I have been moving forward. So I can't discount that. I think there's a piece of me that wants to say, like, what have you done? Where, and part of that is that sentiment that happened in my 30s, that
Mm.
was sort of not feeling like I'm touching the bottom and moving forward. And that
Mm.
moving forward was just more of an internal landscape than it
Mm.
was the external stuff that was going on
Yeah,
necessarily.
that's well said. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love contrast therapy. We've been doing the whole Rogan stack
Yeah.
with me and some buddies up the street here. We've been doing sauna and we've been doing cold plunge, and it just shakes you out of a funk. No matter what day you come in there, you have to sweat, your body starts working, it turns on different chemicals, and then you jump in something that's the complete opposite, which is like 40-degree water.
Mhm.
And you sit in there and you hate it. You sit there and you start to access like, this is where I'm going to be. I decided to be here, which is empowering, right? Now we're doing it in a controlled environment, right? and we're stepping into cold water after being in a hot condition and being like, this is not fun. I want to get out of here as quick as possible. But then settling into it and just being like, this is what it is. What is here for me in this moment? So I think that contrast therapy is, as of recent in the last year that I've been, and it's with brothers too. So it's a brotherhood thing
Mm,
that is just the one of the biggest gaps I think in modern society is that men are just, and you know this, I mean this is what you're working towards too, is men are isolated and alone. And
mm,
so doing this with a band of brothers and this sort of like these baseline tribal urges that we have, but understanding that we're called to the now. We're called to now. Right now is what we have. You know, we can't change the past. We can sort of work towards a future, but in the end, like I'm starting to ask myself, God, what do you have for me right now?
mm,
Where am I with you? And so that space, instead of trying to run away from things or get lost in how you used to have it or don't have it, that contrast therapy is like a very primal way to shake us out of that. And I look at my mid 30s through my 40s as sort of God just shaking me awake
mm,
in stages, in a lot of stages. What's hard about it is there was a lot of hardship.
mm. Were there
And there's
any,
sort of the question like, God, why would you let these things happen to such a good boy?
right? Yeah. Were there any
I'm such a
specific
good boy,
moments?
right?
Were there any specific moments that like,
Yeah, there's a lot of specific moments, but I think the first one would be the birth of my son. And we almost lost him.
mm,
I stood right there and his APGAR was horrid and they're pumping his stomach and he can't breathe. And we went through months in the NICU with him. And that was the first sort of time to grow up in a phase, right? Just
mm,
forced. But I see these things as like the contrast therapy. It's like, yeah, that's the cold. We sat in the cold. What's the hardest part for me to sort of reconcile is, was I truly surrendering the circumstance to God or was I feeling helpless?
mm,
So there was like a proactivity that wasn't present still, sort of that lightness, that balloon floating on the surface. So at first, right, it's sort of health of others that come into play. And
mm.
so it's my son. I don't even know him, but I love him to death. And here we are dealing with something that's just profoundly gutting.
Wow.
And Jess and I, before he went into surgeries, just wondering if he's going to live. And so we're at this doorstep of, do we get to have this boy or do we not? And simultaneously not giving our daughter the time of day because we're trying, but we're just thrashed.
Yeah.
So really emotionally taking us to the absolute limit,
Mm,
that a parent could be in.
wow.
So that was the first sort of big one. There's lots of other little things. I kind of have like a sub story of like my health has kind of always done this. And I think it has, and now I'm looking back and it has to do with the repression and like not listening to myself and not knowing that like
Mm,
sensing what my body actually needed and giving myself rest or giving myself
mm,
the emotional space to pursue and God in prayer and just really relying a lot on myself and building a structure through my 30s that I didn't realize, which was pride on my own. Like the way that I am is the way that I'm supposed to be and I'm right. And I sort of have
mm.
there's always I think I've always looking back, I've always kind of had that stance. And I think you and I had a lot of conversations where you're just like, Shawn, you're coming across as like holier than thou. And I never felt like that was it, but I think in my language and sort of my convictions, it could come across as even though I understand where you're coming from, you're not right now.
Mm,
And some of that was like me holding to that pride through my 30s
mm.
and like trying to just like the resiliency of like the self and just trying to put it all on myself to sort of carry it and not realizing that I'm doing harm, to sort of my own confidence and strength and just sensation of being in my own body,
Yeah.
having to avoid a lot of things.
Well, I noticed when we were so, full disclosure, you and I got to spend a really beloved season of doing some coaching work together. And I think one of the things I noticed through that was like how much you were willing to give and then to see it play out in not fully creating the results that you wanted and then being like exhausted and just depleted and tired and worn out like in the process of giving and then going like, okay, cool. So I wonder if this is a pattern that might be getting in the way of creating the things
Yeah.
that you long to create. And it was sort of this like window into like, what if there was another way? Like, I don't want you to give up the goodness. I don't want you to give up the beautiful love that you have for others, the curiosity that you mentioned. I don't want you to give up any of that. But like, how do we hold the needs that Shawn has or the boundaries that help really create some of these things that you've been called to create? And so that was a fun season of really seeing like, how do we go work out both of these things together? It's almost like this upgraded version of that part of you that you've had leaned on for so many years. Like, how do we take it to the 2.0 or the next phase?
Yeah. Yeah, that era, that time frame was, to be honest, it was the kickoff. Given other events in life that you and I both had to endure, I'm going to reach back and then and sort of bring it back up to this. But I'd been at a church, and I was serving as a part-time pastor amidst working and teaching and just trying to hold too many hats. And I got cooked. And at that point in time, I was just burnt out. It was about 5 years of being in the church at that capacity. And in a lot of ways, I didn't give myself the space to sort of just be in worship with God because I was fulfilling a role in a congregation.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think church before then was actually like a really good place to shake it off. You know, like a dog gets out of the water and it's like, oh, you can have it, God. And it was just an intuition, right? Just in worship and song and things like that. But there's a season of, 5+ years where I'm filling a role that I need to go up and I speak on this, or I serve the Eucharist, or there's all these things that I'm doing in the congregation. I'm not giving myself the space and time outside of church to be like, is wearing a mask in a sense, like just suppressing this part of me that needed this movement, that needed this song, that needed some things in order to give to God, to really surrender the
Hmm.
parts that I didn't even know I was struggling with, right? But I think intuitively I was doing that at a younger age and I didn't even know what I was doing. So like the somatic part has been like really big for me in faith, is sort of vocalizing and singing. And I grew up in the church. My parents played in the worship band. So when I was like 8 years old, they started bringing us to church, and it was at my school at James Dukes Elementary. It was in the same auditorium. So I'd eat lunch there one day and then it'd be in church the next day.
That's awesome.
And so but my parents were always playing the music. They ended up getting recruited to do my mom was great at the piano, and my dad has a nice voice and plays the guitar.
Hmm.
And so they started just being more and more involved over the years. And so I grew up with that. And the house was always full. My mom's practicing, she's singing these songs. And so there's all these songs from the 80s and 90s and like older stuff
Hmm.
that's just a part of me through osmosis, just
Yeah.
being there. And there's a lot of that somatic that played out, I think, at Point Loma. Like, I want to go to this church that has the lights turned off, and I want to sort of like move and feel and be and sing and just like let the emotion. That's when the emotion would come out. Kind of like it like inadvertently when I'm watching a movie that's like, there's something in here that's kind of trapped that you just need to process, right?
Yeah.
That you didn't process on the spot somewhere, right? And so I didn't have that, and we just got exhausted. And we had been married by this pastor. He was, I took classes from him at Loma too, and
Hmm.
he was foundational in a lot of the ways that I was seeing being a Christian.
Yeah.
um it's like this secondary stage in life. It's sort of that next, like, this is the part that I owned,
Sure.
not my parents, not the faith that my parents sort of had passed on, but like this other part of thinking and doing.
Hmm.
And he was deeply woven, and we spent, how many hours, like Sunday evenings at his house, like all this stuff. And I just came to a point where it's like, I'm like, I got to step out of this. So stepped out, and this is like mid 30s. And so I'm starting to sort of slowly step into being more boundaried, right? But maybe not to the degree that was necessary at that point, that could have shifted a lot of the way that I was engaging in life. And about a year and a half, 2 years after that, he's caught in a big scandal.
Hmm.
Yeah, with adultery, like, and it was a huge shakeup. I know for everybody that was involved with him, because he was a stabilizing factor for a lot of people in our generation, right?
Yeah.
Being a teacher and being a pastor. And it really shook us up, but I was already cooked. And we hadn't been going back down, but very intermittently. And then we just stopped going altogether.
Hmm.
Coincided with a time where we were building a project in Ocean Beach, our own development, having to just own that and just be fully making sure that that was happening
Hmm.
became a really easy excuse to not find a new church or shift. And we had shifted and moved up to a new location, really far away in comparison, like 45 minutes away. So we didn't want to be on the road. And life is full with the kids and everything. Um, that was a second hit. And then there's just been a series in my 40s of sort of health items that I think coincide with that somatic part
Yeah.
of just built up emotion stored in my body. So yeah, I mean, when it came to coaching season, I'm coming off that from some big social upheavals, some trust components where it's like
Hmm.
how much I put in sort of other people, like the people that were long standing and adjacent to me in life. Was I a good judge of character? Did I pour too much of my heart or instill too much of my own self-worth in those people? Things like that that came up and we're coming up in that coaching season when, I'm asking you to sort of let's keep moving this external factor out. Like
Hmm.
let's get the business needs to like, Shawn, what's outside your intuitive fence, right?
Hmm.
And this is like, oh, it's going to be business. It's going to be my company. It's going to be the next development. It's going to be whatever needs to be done on the external front. And very quickly, the coaching sessions just, I would not say that they digressed for the original intent or thought intent. Yeah.
Hmm.
But it was the opening up of a place of me saying, okay, I'm going to proactively, Seth is giving me the opportunity to proactively pry open the doors of those parts of my soul and heart
Hmm.
that need to be addressed and start to see if there's some order or different ways of being as all these things internally are playing out. So it became the first opportunity that I think I was able to take ownership. And it's wild because it's hearkening all the way back to our relationship at Point Loma
Yeah.
and the profound depth that we had there, that I felt like I could bring you the soul pieces that are really hurting, that
Hmm.
I don't know that I can talk to anybody else about right now. And we started to suss through it. And like you gave me framework and structure to sort of tools to sort of wade through that where I would have felt very lost
Hmm.
and had a hard time maintaining bearing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the coaching time, I got everything that like the season I'm in now is bearing fruit from.
Hmm.
Like that's the roots started to sort of, right? There's this tree and I'm starting to look at the roots.
Hmm.
Let's look at the roots.
Wow.
And we didn't address everything, right? We still even kind of ended on like I don't know, like I think I need to address this. And so that
Hmm.
process, the opening of like, it's okay. This doesn't have to be a closed subject
Yeah.
was absolutely liberating. Another premise that you had brought up was sort of the idea that we can renegotiate.
Hmm.
Like I'm a man of my word, right? And I used to just stick to that word and then like just feel like a failure,
Hmm.
right?
When it
And
didn't
like,
happen.
yeah, I double booked something or whatever. It's like, man, I carried that with me for the day.
Yeah.
Now I just call the person up before or after. I take accountability for what my actions have caused
Hmm.
and I let them know that I'm a man of integrity. This is what I stand for, you
Hmm.
know? And so being able, like, that was huge to sort of just instead of looking at the perfectionistic issues of me not becoming or being who I wanted to be, that I was able to start to build that with grace,
Hmm.
give grace back to myself.
And what and
And
why?
so with that open, this sort of like open, moving, dynamic, organic thing, it was like for so long, I'm like, maintain the castle, right? And it's like it's crumbling. There's pieces falling off. There's an entire spire that just like it's like, this soul piece, it's like the church. It's just like everything is just like falling out around me.
Yeah.
It was the first place that I started to have, I think, in those aspects of the shadow components of like
Hmm.
my soul and my being and just like the things I'm blind to. Like I started to be able to sort of look at things I was avoiding overtly, right? Look at face to face and like
Hmm.
start to work through that and just have grace that this is a process and it doesn't have to be done now. That's That was the start of that.
Yeah, I think you're highlighting something really important where it's very common to come into a coaching relationship and dream up outcomes that you feel like are the things that you want to go after. And then in the pursuit of actually realize like, wow, we're actually on a different journey and a journey towards deeper healing of the heart as
Mhm.
we're moving here. And it's always fun to go, okay, cool. I love that. Let's go after that for this year. And then be able to notice that like in process, like this is just the playground or the capsule in which we're going to call growth, but we're going to be really open and curious about what else is coming up along the journey and
Mhm.
that we can weave in or even divert energies more towards to go solve for. You mentioned one, I love that sort of like it was almost like you were talking about integrity as like a reshaping or a new understanding of your word and
Mhm.
how it could be used in a way that could be used even as a self-care tool, or I can use my word to
Yeah.
create and I can use my word to protect myself and to create boundaries. I'm curious, were there any other things that got revealed on that journey that you noticed along the way that you're like, oh, this is why we're here having this conversation?
I think that the desire for like the masculine heart,
Mm,
like there's sort of balancing out, this is going to get a little woo woo, but like balancing out that sort of feminine and masculine piece in myself,
yeah.
in recognizing that there's parts of me that do have that like caring aspect, but there's like this, there's a deep piece that has been repressed and completely avoided,
Mm,
that's like primal and wants things and takes things and needs to be ordered correctly in the sight of God, right? But I had sort of seen it as something that I think was, ooh, I don't want to touch that. That's like, that's raw, untamed. That's not who I am. I decided to be this person a long time ago. I'm going to hold to that. I'm going to be a nice guy. I'm going to, and then there was so there was sort of like a birth of that and like more of that coming out that I think you and I had talked about Ocean Beach and our development. We built these 3 single family homes on a very hard to develop property,
mm,
incredibly hard, flood zone, coastal height limits, all these things. And so like in a lot of ways, it was a huge success. We got it done in a time frame in like 2016. We
mm,
purchased the property in 2013. So it was like all the timing was right. Professionally, it was like it was a phenomenal achievement.
mm.
But there was
I love
a
that you just
falling
said
out
that
with
too. Like you just own that. That was a phenomenal achievement. Like it
it.
was.
It's
Yeah.
huge.
Well
It's
done.
like there's just yeah, it's funny because we ended on a sour note with the partnership. Things fell apart. There was a gentleman that was brought into the project that was clearly a scam artist,
Wow.
but he had some skills and he was able to, trowel on stucco and like he was able to build a deck and my partners had sort of put this guy in place and I was there on site to manage and so I felt like I received something that I didn't ask for
Mm,
and as things progress I kept asking myself what harm is this guy going to cause. I kind of get a sense, my intuition was telling me like
mm,
we got to get rid of him, but there's a piece of me that didn't, the nice guy in me didn't get rid of him, didn't confront it, didn't create, you know, the chafe that needed to happen with the partnership to get him out of there. And he caused all sorts of problems at the back end. And then on top of that, it just sort of soured the partnership. And so we have this we have this partnership that it still is held together and it's doing its thing and it's a success. But on the social front, the heart front, total disaster. Total and absolute disaster.
that failure to sort of confront and draw lines and
Yeah.
like is that what you're talking about, that masculine piece
Well,
of
I had to in that time. I had to do it often, just
uh
in the nature of construction and being a contractor. But I think that one was really hard because I didn't know how to do it in a way. The timing was wrong, and sort of the exaggeration of anger and emotion that would come through from me, where I just snap, just be like, "What are you doing? You need
mm,
to knock it off," But it was with my partnership; it was misdirected in the places that I should have been more attentive and generous
mm,
with my anger and the ways that I handled it. The frustration of things being burdened upon me and me taking and carrying it and not being recognized. I mean, I lived on site for 6 months because of errors that had nothing to do with me.
wow.
I lived on site and I worked every day because we had to get it done. And then, sort of like I snapped and said things that I get a sense of people, I think profoundly sometimes I have a sense of what's like really their underpinning. And like I said some things that just cut to my partner's core and he couldn't forgive me, and vindictive nature came out, and sort of there's this feeling of failure in that department for the guy that's supposed to be like the relational guy that can like hold things together. Like
Mm.
I've always been sort of a glue, I've sort of been a peacekeeper, a peacemaker, um, brought really like hard subjects, like people are having arguments and things, and being able to sort of like be blunt and direct, but like somehow spin it so that they could receive a criticism that had to do with them or a circumstance, and like point them in a direction, right? But I don't always use that gift well. And that was one of those circumstances that it sort of imploded. And so with that said, like, learning to capture the masculine heart and sort of the decisiveness,
Hmm.
um, taking up space, knowing who I am, and then just boundaries. I mean, just simply what to do with anger
Hmm.
and boundaries, and then sussing that out. So there's this whole aspect of like this uncontrolled sort of masculine, and I'd let it come out because I didn't have a relationship with it that was a gradient, right?
Sure.
And so I think that coaching had it pointed me in that direction.
Hmm.
And it was because it was the embers were sort of blown back on. You're like in the fire in the coaching session, and I'm like, oh man, I think the fire's starting again. Like, what is that? That's uncomfortable?
Hmm.
Like, what do I do with that? Oh. So I had to confront pieces of myself all through that time. Like I've always been a huge fan of like personality tests and things like that that just give their tools.
Hmm.
And you and I had sort of talked a lot about Enneagram, and
Hmm.
so I was on the cusp of a 9 wing 1. Like I'm like 1 point off of being a 9 wing 8.
Hmm.
And it's been interesting. They say that some people even like flip to the other wing in their second stage of life.
Hmm.
And so I just see myself at that point, like it's clear now. But the coaching session brought me to a point where it's like, you need to start addressing your eightness. That's going to give you stability.
Hmm.
Your wife wants this, your friends want it, right? To tell people where you stand
Yeah.
is good, instead of flowing along with whatever
And just to this.
everybody's going and doing this. And so I don't, and then getting into it and being like, I don't feel like why, and not wholly being there, like being there in the fullness of
Hmm.
character, like distracted or your heart's not in it, right? And then people are like, why are you not? You said you wanted to come, but you're coming along with us, so you're dragging your feet. What's going on? Like, "Oh, not intentionally, but unintentionally, my spirit knew, right?"
Which
So
is.
there's that part of that eightness of like, yeah, I have some gruff things in my spirit that like I can learn to temper with all that I've learned up to this point, right? And not neglect this whole range of being that's on like another piece of the other wing of me, the other half of me, right? There's sort of like there's the one wing that's here, and it walked really well for seasons and time, and then it just got too stuck, right? And it's like there's a whole nother half of you, whether that's a masculine and a feminine, or
Hmm.
it's your 8 or your one wing or whatever it is, but there's that whole dynamic of like that other side, and starting to look at the shadows of the pieces of those things and the parts of yourself that you don't like. That's like the whole journey of the holy grail. Like
Yeah.
that's why I'm not landing in a static spot right now, but the sort of framework that I'm able to work within now is flexible, still contained. It's feeling more solid. Like I
Hmm.
know where the boundaries are now to a
Hmm.
certain degree, that like I've restructured. I'm still restructuring some, but like I feel like a man in a direction now.
Wow. Yeah.
And I can recognize where I don't have direction and say, we'll address that when we get there. But there's not, that time's not right now, maybe. Right now we're here. And
Hmm.
so coaching gave me that sort of plasticity of, it's a dynamic structure. I don't know. Whereas I was too rigid before, but I needed structure. And so I blew out of that, and I've come back, come out and been like, whoa, I don't know where the boundaries are. This is
Hmm.
getting scary. Um, to sort of coming back to in the last, I think, year to 2 years, real profound structure at the core of my existence with the call that God's put on my life.
Yeah. And I can see it, man. Like that. I think that's one of the reasons I wanted you to just speak. And this has been such a cool platform just to be like, please just speak and talk to us about the journey you've been on, because I've seen it in the last year. There's this crystallizing of like, this is who I am. This is what I care about. There's still that deep care and goodness that you have for others, but it's so much more pointed and directed and strong, you know, in what you're exhibiting out in the world. And it's been so cool to see just through the arc of everything you've just talked about, like it's starting to crystallize. And not saying that this is like the finished state at all, but it has this, sort of gone through the fire and refined state where the dross has been burned out of it a bit, and we're getting a much more pure picture of like this Shawn that's meant to be creating, leading, standing for things out in the world that are good. And so it seems like such a more solid structure that is starting to take shape. It's really cool to see.
I walked through the Grail Castle the last 5 years, and a lot of it, I think, I can pull the thread longer and say it's through my 30s. But to be honest, it was that internal landscape piece is what's been missing. And I've been captivated by it. It's almost like I'm so eager to get in and dig in, and especially with God being the rails, the Spirit being the rails to it. It's been, yeah, on Christ, the solid rock I stand on,
Mm.
everything else is sinking sand. Been this season in life is truly being given vision and being given an immense amount of providence in weekly, daily interactions. It's been insane. And it's not that those things weren't there before. It's just that what's the lens that we're allowing to be shown with? There's a big, vast season for me, which is funny because like I could just look back and say like, no, you just been Christian the whole time. But there's a big swatch of me being in the wilderness, big swatch. And that swatch and that contrast is what has actually enabled me to see the profound moments, the providence that God is continually giving us.
Mm.
And it's been really great. I think maybe if anything, like in this conversation, we've shortchanged sort of the last 5 years, but there's just, if I can sort of condense it, it's been an extreme sort of blowing out and seeing where the boundaries are and then being called back because I just started losing, like I felt like the ocean was too vast.
Oh,
I
wow.
was swimming through it now, right? I'm swimming, I'm creating, but it's like, this is so vast.
Mm.
This is so immense. This is scary if I'm like to hold it on myself. And so in the last like season, it's that sovereignty of God that starts in faith. I come back to faith because I haven't been able to pull all the pieces together for myself
Mm.
in entirety. But now I'm looking at the gaps that I didn't see in my own, let's just call it spirituality for the sake of categorizing, but that God wants us to come to faith and then we can expand from there and understanding. And through that lens, now we can start to understand and think, right? We can start to think with our head and see with our heart, right? And the body can leave, it can start to allow God to take the anxiety out of it. Because what is the anxiety for?
Mm.
Nobody's promised tomorrow, right? You and I, we're not promised anything in front of us right now. And so all we can do is trust in the sovereignty of God
Mm.
that we see in Christ. And from that, I just see the world expanding from here on out.
Mm.
I feel stable. I feel like there's the firm foundation is back. And it's the same foundation that I felt as a kid, just in a different conviction.
Yeah.
And so I've passed through the Grail Castle again, or I'm still at the edge of the Grail Castle. I don't know entirely,
Mm-hmm.
but there's been this prolific midlife crisis of sorts that I've firmly planted on the promise that we all have
Mm.
in Christ,
Mm.
in grace, in faith, that now allows us to build and become outside of that, to build, bring in knowledge for our character to grow. At
Mm.
the same time, recognizing the profound nature that we are individually, that God has created, but not getting stuck on that and turning back out. I think now my acts of service outwardly to others, there's boundaries, but I very much ask myself, what is this for?
Mm.
My intention is to do this. God, what is your intention to have of me? And then
Mm.
having the discernment. So I think sharpening the sword is like the season. I just feel like I'm about to go back out on the journey and I might have to walk through the wilderness in other ways, but having that sharp sword and that shield and, the armor of God in that way, it's so cheesy. Sunday school stuff, but like it has a whole different meaning when you're a man that's truly going out to battle. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen the war, right? In Sunday school, it was on a felt board for me. Like I lived that. That's something that I don't think you lived. But
Mm,
there's like this Bible story, like in the breastplate of righteousness, and the sword of the spirit. And there's like this, like, aha, that's scripture, right? It's
theoretical.
Paul.
Yeah.
It's Paul talking about it, but like I have this like very
Mm,
like just juvenile sort of form of it in my mind,
yeah.
and it's been completely transformed to be, no, this is the reality of how you've been made. Your
Mm,
entirety, all of this stuff actually fits on you and in you and through
mm,
you, and it's given to you as a gift, and it's all here because you are being made whole, because this is your creator has made you
mm, dude.
to be who you are in the fullness of who you are that he created you to be. And so that's the journey we're on.
Mm,
We're realizing ourselves and others, and
mm,
we have to entrust to the sovereignty of God, and his kingdom come, and his will be done. And in that, like, rest, like, don't rest on our own sin, don't rest on our own thoughts of wanting to become God, the original sin of that, like, I got this, right? The
yeah.
masculine essence that, like, I have to toil and be this thing, and that's all I have is myself, and everybody's relying on me. That's that's a cul-de-sac that doesn't expand,
Yeah.
that rots and dies at a certain point. So
It's so good, man.
I'm excited in this season. This season has been, and even in like the last couple months, like I've had some immensely profound moments that have just given me a lot of peace,
Yeah.
right? And so it's that peace that, like, I was trying to build from the outside, that, yeah, now it's here. It's here. It's fleeting. It's here and there. But I'm not chasing it. I'm waiting. God will give it to me. And when it's right and how it's right. And there's other times I'm supposed to be in the cold dip
Yeah.
and just dealing with.
But what I hear though is like even if the cold plunges come, like there's a greater sense of withness with him in it, like that's not
Yeah.
like vacant. I'm in the wilderness alone and it's all on me, and fear and anxiety and all the trappings of that come rushing back. It's like, no, there's a groundedness, there's a steadiness. I know he's here with me in it, and I'm up for it. And man, to me that is such a picture of how man is like supposed to enter this world and offer his strength to the world and fight for the things that are good. And I just see you like so up for and ready for whatever comes at you, man. So it's been so cool to like hear your story and hear just this is almost like a halftime story, like at 45, right? Like, hey, there's half of it, right? And there's a whole other half to go be played out. But I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to like walk us through the first half, and how much hope there is, man, for anybody that's listening around the journey that they may be in, if they're in a cold plunging season or a time of wilderness, or just getting smacked in the face with the way that they've typically been working, and it's not working anymore. It's not working in marriage. It's not working in business. It's not working raising kids, or whatever it may not be working. It's really cool just to hear how your story has, like, God hasn't left. Like, he's right there with you in it, and he's refining and bringing you back to like that wholehearted man that he's made you to be. So thank you so much, man, for taking us through this journey. And you speak it so well, so eloquently, and I feel like I learned a ton about you. Even though I'm your best friend, I learned a ton on the journey, and I'm super grateful for you, brother.
Yeah, Seth, thanks for having me. I definitely need to say that, we always lean on the as iron sharpens iron. I'd heard in the last year, I think somebody had said something like, iron doesn't sharpen iron very well.
Mm,
It's not a pleasant process. Not pleasant. You can still sharpen with iron. It's not the ideal situation. And I just got to say that I don't feel like iron sharpening iron. I feel like there's something else here. There's some alchemy. So there's some sort of, you're able to draw, at least out of me. And I know with others, I mean, I've seen it. You draw out and temper people, allow them to be tempered in a way that builds up.
mm,
There's something that you capture. And so I'm incredibly grateful for the coaching, but just in general, the friendship. I mean, your wisdom and your insight and where your journey's brought you
mm,
is just profound as
mm.
well. And I give God thanks for your life and the bond that we have.
Brother, receive that. Love it. So good.